Hi, I'm Marietta, an artist and a prop maker. Thanks for being here. This time on the background, I have hanging out another creature build that I've made, Nyx from the game Star Wars Outlaws. In the last video, I talked about how different visual methods can elevate heroic characters in art. This time, I want to dive more into the story that we're telling with a single image, and I will use again my Star Wars fan art to go through several well-known principles of thoughtful composition, symbolism, and narrative elements that exist to guide the viewer through the story. And artworks that are not just portraits, but also tell a story, usually end up being my best pieces of art. Last time, I talked already about composition, which simply means how we arrange the elements in the picture. And the goal of a good composition, which is to emphasize, for example, the focal point of the art, its tension point, or the message and mood. I want to illustrate those ideas with this artwork that I did of Darth Vader. I will put it here on the screen. Darth Vader here is sitting in his small pressurized meditation chamber, which is the only place where he can remove his helmet. But what is just as important is what is not in the image, meaning how do you balance positive space, which is areas with elements, and negative space, which is areas with no notable elements or just background. Most of the space here is negative space, so it's forcing the viewer's gaze directly to the most important and notable detail here, which is the face, and especially the eye. The rest is just darkness. The dark areas are the jaws of the chamber that interlock and seal him in, which is not really a peaceful idea. The structure is on purpose blocking half of his face, meaning we will never truly see and understand everything about this character. He is a mysterious, unreachable villain to most of us. I made his expression ambiguous on purpose. It may first look like this character is just void of emotion, but the more you look at it, you may start seeing maybe deep sadness or pain, or maybe it looks like irritation that you've disturbed his peace. I feel like I made him look somewhat vulnerable, but I left him with his dignity. I'm a huge fan of Darth Vader, and I personally feel that the more you deconstruct him and dive into his personal space, the more you diminish his character. I already touched the subject of expressive characters and emotion, but I want to stay on the topic and concentrate on body language and facial expressions. This is artwork that I made of the Jedi apprentice or Padawan Ahsoka Tano many years ago, actually. Inspiration for this was the animated show, and the animated character was the only depiction of her that we had at the time. So instead, I wanted to draw her realistically. The emotional weight in this art is enough to make the viewer to stop and to consider it. Even if you're unfamiliar with this character, the questions raised are enough to encourage the viewer to start coming up with their own stories and explanations. This is a girl that looks like a 13 or 14-year-old. She looks like she's seen or experienced something that deeply shocked her, but she also seems not to be able to affect her situation. It's almost like her path has already been chosen for her. These are all valid interpretations of the art, but those who know the character will possibly understand this art even on another level with the context of her backstory. When you look past the emotional face in the center, you will start noticing that this character has someone's dark hands grabbing her shoulders. And when you pay even more attention, you will realize that the armor belongs to Darth Vader, her former master, Anakin Skywalker. Ahsoka's story is really tragic. First, she had to experience the Clone Wars, but the looming idea is that she will have to come to the terms that her father figure turns to the dark side. She carries her own scars of war, of what happened and what she did, and now what happened to the people closest to her. It is a heavy burden to carry and still stay in the light. In addition to just making a pretty portrait, my secondary goal was critique. By making an animated character look hyper-realistic, we get to look at them in a different light than in the adventures of a TV show. Animation works really well for Star Wars. The last season of Clone Wars, I never thought that animation could cause such strong emotions. But if the whole show was live action with real actors, then it would be more obvious that the Jedi students, the Padawans, were children. In this particular art, I criticize the Jedi. However, it is subtle. It is left open for the viewer to interpret themselves based on what they believe. But as a standalone piece of art, this lets me explore those thoughts. One way to see this art is that the Jedi are bad. Look what they did to her, how they treated this kid over the years. Ahsoka should have followed Anakin because he was the only one who truly cared about her. Another interpretation is that the dark side is the reason for all the conflict and evil that was brought to the galaxy. And to her life, it brought only pain and destruction. The grip of Vader's gloves is a physical manifestation of it. Even after all the suffering, she needs to be stronger than one could ever expect from a single person to resist the ultimate evil. But art is free for everyone to view like they want. Next, in the topic of characters and emotions, I want to talk about interaction. One way of telling a story is showing the characters interacting with each other or their environment in meaningful ways, which can tell a story of relationship, conflicts, or just emotions. I wasn't supposed to underline that Darth Vader is one of my favorite characters, but I'll stick with the theme because he provokes so many story ideas and emotions, also the characters around him. This one is also one of my earliest pieces of fan art. It's an illustration for a fanfiction called An Interview with a Sith Lord. The fanfic is not public anymore, but I really enjoyed the plot of this fanfic and I wanted to illustrate it. First, I want to give some background to the two characters, Vader and the Imperial officer Firmus Piet. In the movie Empire Strikes Back, Vader finally gets dissatisfied enough about the incompetence of Admiral Ozzel and personally gets rid of him. Then he promotes a mere captain directly to the rank of admiral of his fleet. Why does Vader pick Piet? Is this just a whim? Piet just happens to be lucky enough to stand nearby when the admiral dies? Of course not. Vader may be brutal, but he's not mindlessly chaotic. Of course he's been observing the officers on the bridge, and he knows who is the most competent. Before the events of Empire Strikes Back, before Vader had his new flagship, the Executor, Captain Piet was in command of the Star Destroyer Accuser. He was not on Vader's ship, the Devastator, but all these ships are part of Vader's own fleet, the Death Squadron. So it was during the Legends, Disney canon changes Piet's backstory, but we don't care about it now. When we get to the events of Empire Strikes Back, Captain Piet has left the command of his own ship and transferred to the Executor to serve under Admiral Ozzel. And we see him being dismissed and ridiculed by him, but not by Vader. And there comes the idea of this fanfiction. Before his transfer, Vader had been observing his fleet in order to find the most loyal and competent people, because the tension between him and the Emperor was growing. Interview with the Sith Lord is about the time that Vader personally interviewed Piet and made sure they see eye to eye, so that when the time is right, Vader can place him and other loyal Imperials into tactical positions. That's why Piet doesn't bat an eye when he gets the promotion. But the talk and interaction between these two in this artwork speaks of fear and authority. I'm depicting Vader looking huge compared to a normal guy. He looks almost like Dracula with his fangs, and even fanfiction describes the Dark Lord circling him like a hungry Nexu. Piet, on the other hand, tries his best to cover his fear. There's definitely a power imbalance between the characters, but it's also a conversation of goals, of values, of loyalty. Piet holds his ground, and that's why he's on Vader's team. A few years later, we see an Imperial officer who has an understanding with Darth Vader, who seems to be almost unfazed by his presence. He's one of the few officers who survived Vader's ruthless command and stayed loyal until the end. Piett is really a cool character that gives a face to the other side of the conflict. He's just a guy trying to do his job. He's played by a really nice man called Kenneth Colley. His character is interesting enough that some years ago I made a fan comic about him. If I get enough viewers on these videos, maybe I will consider making a comic video in the future and to review it. This is just first part of these videos where I discuss how to tell a story in one piece of art. I will continue with more artistic analysis in the next one. Thank you for watching.